ease the disappointment a lot of people felt. And I think that's in some ways why the liberals he represented after him for at least some time had a hard time, because he had raised hopes so high for a lot of people. And it's like, I mean, things did change. I'm a big fan of Barack Obama. The overall character is a huge and ongoing achievement. But how do you narrativize the difference between people's hopes for your campaign and what they got? Donald Trump is interesting because he comes after Obama. He also makes huge, sweeping, wild promises.
They never
Obama
built
never did, right?
They never built
they don't build the wall. But Donald Trump has this way of communicating throughout his entire presidency. I mean, he loses re-election, right? So it doesn't work exactly. But
I mean, the thing is but the problem here is that Trump has a cult. Like, it's not the same, right? There's no Obama cult. There's no Biden cult. There's no Democratic cult, right? Like, can you make the argument that, like, vote blue no matter who voters are, like, a cult? Maybe, but it's, like, nowhere near as much as, like... It's nowhere near as much as the Republican Party, right? Like, Trump has a cult. He speaks to them as if, like, they are a cult, like cult members, parts of a cult. Like, that's the thing. Like, conservatives have to sort of, like, believe in, like, cult belief in order to be able to, I don't know, like, be excited. Like, they can't run on cult. Like, this is not how that works, right?
He is always, it's like sometimes a president, but he's not responsible for what happens. He's like a deep state. Yeah. So there was a narrative that Donald Trump maintained as president that allowed him to explain away the difference between what he attempted and what he achieved. And now Trump is president again, and he has much more control over the government. So it's not as much of a deep state narrative this time.
Although he has spent the last 24 hours railing against the intelligence apparatus.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's right. Very classic.
So yes, because they say that the Iranian strikes only set it back by a couple months, and he's saying it's false. So this one is like, can you use it as a form of power? But then can you use it if you're not being able to get it done, right? Can you narrativize the grimy, gritty, just reality of governing in a way that maintains, like, the faith people have in you, even if you're not being able to deliver to them what you promised?
I think there's a few things I'd say about that. One, I think mayor is different than president in a lot of ways, partly because it is much more retail, and you can get a long way by showing up a lot. I mean, Eric Adams actually does it pretty well. And I thought
there's a club opening.
What's that? And this is Chuck Schumer's legendary talent, not as mayor, as senator, but before that as congressman. There is a little bit of a just trap that is difficult to avoid, which is like, it will be more difficult to govern than it is to campaign, always. Andrew Cuomo's father quite famously said, we campaign in poetry and we govern in prose. And I think that part of the way, I guess, that you escape that trap is talented political communication. I mean, I really do. Like, I think you have to do a good job. Like, you can't be a total failure as a mayor, right? Like, the city has to feel like, you have to feel like there's tangible improvements in people's
lives.
The
Baileys! The Baileys!
You basically need both. I thought that the Mamdani video to close out the campaign where he walks the length of Manhattan and he's just like talking to people, dapping people up, eating a slice of pizza, drinking water, like that, you have to keep doing that, I think, to be an effective mayor. And I think that does actually allow you to narrativize. Yeah. Because it's like, I'm out here in the streets and I'm talking to people and I'm hearing what you're saying about what you're trying to do and I'm communicating to you about what we're trying to do. The getting caught trying, I think, is sort of the key part of that.
But let me go back to the other question that I tucked in there, which is, I think this is something you're seeing from Trump right now, which is he actually has an instinct for how to turn policy that isn't affecting that many people into something that is potentially salient, which is to make it a performance.
Yeah, he performs everything,
so, including war.
I watched the Majority Report.
The sending people to foreign prisons and having Kristi Noem, like, pose at them in her, in her flak jacket. That there's a way that he feels to me, I mean, there's a genuine attention there, so we will about Donald Trump.
Yeah,
and that he is trying to make much more of policy into a public performance. I mean, there is a reason.
I mean, Dr. Phil is embedded with the ice teams.
Dr. Phil's embedded with the ice teams. His cabinet is full of, like, people from TV, be they reality TV stars from one period, like Sean Duffy, all the way over to the Secretary of Defense, who's Weekend Cable News host. So there is this way in which I think Trump has been trying to sort of square this. Like, most people will not feel the effect of most of his policies, but what if he can turn those policies into programming?
Yes, but here's the irony, right? Like,
okay, but that's because, like, again, people are just, like, criminally undereducated. This is a problem with education, right? Like, people don't understand these things because they're, like, too abstracted, and, like, it's very difficult for people. Like, again, the One Big Beautiful Bill was, like, 880 pages, okay? Like, Asmongold fucking complained about how many fucking pages it was, right? And it's like, ain't nobody got fucking time to read all that shit, right? And they're not gonna understand the language in it anyways, right? It's because it's difficult, like, prose and language. And that's on purpose. Like, part of it is performance. Yeah, I don't disagree with this, right? Like, Donald Trump's a TV personality, right? Like, his whole shtick is that, The Apprentice and stuff like that, and just being, like, kind of like a meme, like, if you just look at, like, his Truth Social posts, for fuck's sake, it's all just, like, complete, like, meme show, like, whatever bullshit, dog shit, whatever nonsense, and it's just, like, complete stupid idiocy. But the thing is, like, the reason why it's, like, difficult more and more than ever in order to sort of, like, communicate policy to people is because the criminal education, who do you blame for that? It's Bush and Ronald Reagan. The consequences of, like, what? State-mandated fucking testing, no child left behind, and the destruction of the subsidies given to universities is going to, well, affect the American educational attainment for, well, still for generations to come, I would say. And do you think people like Linda McMahon are going to sort of, like, fix that problem? No, they're going to further privatize all that stuff. Like, it's silly. Like, that's how I at least see it. I see it as, like, a huge educational problem.
Like, he's at 10 points underwater, and like all this stuff's pulling at exactly what you would predict from thermostatic public opinion, and from like the use of the bully pulpit. I mean, David Shore had a thing the other day about one of the most consistent counterintuitive findings is that when a president talks about something, its negatives go up. Right, the sort of negative bully pulpit. And so now the question to me is, and this is the thing that I think feels very unresolved because of how sui generis Trump is and how sui generis his trajectory has been, is like, does it net out as a positive? The question of attentional domination, he does it better than anyone. He is a genuine innovator and a weird genius for attention at a pathological and feral level that is not replicable. But the constant show, the constant conflict, like his negatives are high. He lost re-election. He stuck around. He won. He almost immediately started to tank in the polls. He's a very polarizing figure. It works at some level. There's some power to it. But like, how much does it work still remains unclear to me.
I think that's right. But what it works to do is set narrative. And that...
I feel like that's like not really addressing the problem with fascism in like speaking. Like, Trump is a fascist. I don't think that's like hyperbole to say, right? Like, fascists like, I don't want to say thrive in conflict, but desire conflict at all stages constantly, right? They are okay with the polarization because it foments conflict. Because again, like, for the fascists to justify their positions, they have to be in battle at all times. They have to be militarized and ready to act upon a dime at all fucking times. Because, oh man, if you're not scared constantly all the time, like, you're going to lose everything. Everything's going to be lost. Blah 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 blah. That's a problem with fascism that like liberals are just not simply going to like really address and like ever like be able to take care of, right? Because a lot of it's like nonsensical and farcical when it comes from fascists. Like it's ridiculous. It's silly, right? Like, but like it's one of those things where it's just like, well, it's a broader, like, more, I would say, like, baseline ideological thing with Trump at this point.
That is its own dimension of power. It's a kind of power that he exerts in a way few presidents do over culture. And I would say this is true for Mamdani, right? Mamdani as a discourse object. Trump is a discourse object, right? It's not like Zohran Mamdani is the only person who recently won a Democratic primary anywhere in the country. In Jersey, right, just over. Mikey Sherrill, just won, who's House member, just won the primary for governor. Sherrill, I think, is an incredibly impressive politician, a former Navy helicopter pilot, right? Like, I find her very, very, very charismatic.
Yeah, she's very good.
More on the moderate side of things, right? There was not a debate after those wins. Does every Democrat need to reckon with the victory of Sherrill in the way that right now there's a discourse of how does every Democrat and possibly every politician, possibly every human being need to reckon with what we just saw in this Democratic primary in New York City?
The governor, the former governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, who served...
I mean, to be fair, it's also probably because I think people are reckoning with it, Ezra, because of the fact that New York City is like the city. Like, if people think of a city across the world, they're going to think of New York. New York is one of the largest cities, well, in human history. It's a cultural icon, right? Like, in like all the fucking like Marvel movies and shit like that, and it has representation in like so much media property, right? Like, it is a city of all time. It is a historical location, right? New York City. Everyone knows about fucking New York City, right? Like, if you talk about like anyone in the world, they're gonna like talk about New York City or Los Angeles, right? Because those are like the sort of like main sort of cultural items and sort of like beacons of the United States of America, right? Like, I think that's probably like the bigger reason. Like, no one really gives much of a shit at all about like, I don't know, moderate winning the governorship in New Jersey's like gubernatorial like prime. Who fucking cares about any of that shit? Okay, this is New York, where all the news anchors live, for example. So obviously they're gonna fucking talk about it, right? They're all in like fucking New York. That's where they're all stationed. It's like, if you think of like a city that's like shining on top of the hill, New York is that city. That sort of like American idea, right? That's like American dream, like personified, is New York City.
Terms in a state that Trump has won every time he's been on the ballot there, and left with, I think, 55-56% approval rating. No one's like, we need to find the next Roy Cooper. Like, that guy has like, he was an insanely effective politician in very difficult terrain and has none of these like attentionally salient qualities, right? And we talked about this last time, which is like high risk, high reward, high volatility stuff. Like, there are trade-offs here.
I guess this is where the question you were asking a minute ago feels like it bites to me, which is, you're saying, does this kind of attentional dominance net out as positive?
Right.
It can clearly win. It can clearly win primaries. It clearly can help you exert a cultural and narrative force.
And an ideological force.
Like above and beyond what you would be able to do, right? AOC is not like the only Democrat who has like knocked off another Democrat in primary. She's not the only Democrat to win a House seat. She's incredibly salient as a national politician because of her ability to drive attention. And on the other hand, a lot, like, I recently was talking to a bunch of various people in the sort of New Democrats caucus, which is like the more moderate House Democrats caucus. And one thing that struck me, just talking to them, is a couple of them are very talented communicators, but they're actually, what most of them communicate in their bearing and the way they are, is not flashy, aggressive, ideological projects.
Right.
It's a kind of, like, this person might coach you a little league.
Yeah.
And so these things work and don't work in different places. And I'm I don't think we have a good way of answering the question of like when is it valuable to drive this kind of attention and when is it
Okay, so here's what I would say. I think one place where it matters is
I think it's because like generally it's because moderate politics is dead. No one cares about fucking centrism. Let's be honest here, right? Everyone fucking hates centrists. No one likes neoliberalism. It's a dying ideology, right? So that's why they're like, yeah, they could be, all those guys within that caucus could be like an incredibly effective communicators and like politically efficacious and stuff like that. The problem is that like no one gives a shit about like moderate politics, like, because let's be honest here, all the news media, generally speaking, like bludgeons you over the head with like moderate politics. It's all about being centrist, moderate, and everyone's just like kind of like probably got like an idea in their head saying like, well, why does nothing ever fucking happen? Why does everything fucking suck in this goddamn country? It's because of all these like moderate fucking politicians. Like, fuck these guys. Fuck the moderation, okay? We want something radical. We want something energized. Something, give us something like, give us battle or some shit. No more of this like namby-pamby, pimbly-wimbly fucking bullshit, right? Like, people are just tired of like incrementalism around the edges. They want someone who's actually going to significantly uproot the status quo. That's what people want.
Presidential politics. Yes. So I think presidential politics, like, there's just no question that it matters at that level. And you need someone who is a insanely skilled communicator with an incredible appetite and instinct for attention. The kind of person who wants to go do 3-hour podcast interviews.
Yes.
I think if you have a person who's not that, you're really in trouble. The other thing that I think is worth considering is the valence of incumbent versus challenger, where I actually think this sort of is interesting to think about. I think this kind of attentional dominance works better as a challenger than an incumbent. Sure. For exactly the reason we're talking about, right? So like, we're seeing right now Donald Trump recreate some of the thermostatic public opinion on immigration that he had the first term, which was part of what drove Democrats to adopting a line on immigration that was to the left of what their previous line had been, partly along the lines of how public opinion had changed in recoiling in horror at what Donald Trump was doing on immigration. So my point being here is that there are more...
I don't agree with this. I don't think so, right? Like, Democrats retreated in terms of like, Title 42 was still kept in place, right? Like, quite literally, Title 42 was still kept in place by Joe Biden, like, generally speaking, which is why like a lot of immigrant communities felt abandoned by the Democratic Party, and you know, like, felt like maybe something will change under Trump for some fucking bumblefuck reason, right? Because they got abandoned, they felt abandoned. It's like, you know, they operated on the idea, it's just like, well, you know, Donald Trump's just going to go after those illegals. He's not going to go after me, guys. Probably not. Which was ludicrous, right? It's like, you think about that for 3 seconds, like, that's silly, right? Like, it's pretty obvious and clear. Like, Donald Trump doesn't like pussyfoot around with the shit like that. But it's just like, the alternative is just like more of the exact same, right? And those like ideas are now being more like sort of like cemented by in the minds of like average people as like, oh well, you know, the Democrats also are not going to be great on immigration either. So it's like, whatever, because damn, maybe we should have gotten rid of fucking Title 42 and all this other like bullshit that the Republicans wanted in terms of like immigration, because it was like it was a total red herring that the Republicans were complaining about anyways, because of, again, I've talked about this before, but the 2019 Venezuelan coup with like all the people that came in from via TPS, right? Why were a lot of them Venezuelan? Because of this. I don't know why my computer's being so slow right now. Jesus Christ. But it's because of this shit. This uprising attempt, this shit right here, this is why. Why did a lot of Venezuelans come over from Venezuela into the U.S.? Why was there a big migrant wave, right? We can pull up the TPS chart as well, right? Of the 1.2 million sort of like migrants that came up, about 700,000 of them were Venezuelans. Why? Because of this coup attempt that Donald Trump was doing with Juan Guaido and like 3 other dudes in a trench coat, right? Man, I wonder why it's a lot of Venezuelans that are being accepted via TPS because of that coup attempt. Because Donald Trump was mad that his coup attempt didn't work, so he slapped a bunch of harsh sanctions on Venezuela, which caused their economy to go into hyperinflation. And a lot of people left as a result. And then, well, Biden, now having to be saddled with all these like migrants that are coming in now, whoa, let in a bunch of them via TPS for the Republicans to, you know, scream and preen about politically all the time, saying like, look at Joe Biden bringing in all these illegals. It's like, well, you're directly responsible for that. But again, like, the Democrats were okay with the Venezuelan coup attempt, so they're not going to communicate the fact that, well, this is why you did a coup attempt. Like, this is what happened. But the Democrats are okay with that coup attempt because they also wanted to depose Nicolas Maduro. Again, this is where the coalescing interests of the Democrats and the Republicans are actively, well, let's be honest here, snubbing the Democrats even more, right? Because now this is a political talking point that Trump can use in order to bludgeon the heads over with Democrats for. It's bullshit. It's nonsense. But again, since the Democrats were actually, in fact, okay with this coup attempt that Donald Trump was doing and the subsequent sanctions on the Maduro regime, as a result of this complete, utter failure, well, it makes it such that they're essentially the ones holding the political bag on that one and have to dance to the tune of, well, Republicans on that one.
Upsides to downsides of the challenger for this high volatility, high risk, high reward attentional trade than there are for the incumbent. And so they work better for the challenger than they do for the incumbent.
I also think there's a dimension here where this is very, very, very valuable in primaries.
Yeah.
Everything we were saying a minute ago about policy that becomes mimetic is policy that unlocks a lot of attention, usually through controversy, where some people really like it and other people really hate it. And what you're hoping to do when you unleash that kind of attentional energy, that kind of conflict energy, is that there are more people who really like the thing than really hate it. And the trade that you often see some of these candidates make is they are unleashing energy in the primary that might hurt them in the general.
Yeah.
So it is a often made observation about Donald Trump that he seems to underperform in the general. He's incredibly dominant at the primary level.
Right.
But Trump and then candidates like him who are less talented than him, MAGA candidates, tend to underperform in the general. Right? I think a lot of people believe, and I'm one of them, that if Republicans had run Marco Rubio in 2016, they would have won by more. And I actually think that's true in 2024 also. They run Nikki Haley, if they probably run DeSantis, they would have won by more. Like the conditions were there for that. Trump creates a lot of negative attention on him in general elections. New York is weird in a lot of ways, but one is that just the expectation is, if you have won the Democratic primary, you have won. Right? The fact that is not a complete expectation with Mamdani speaks to the way that there's at least a belief that he will generate counter mobilization against him at a higher rate than like a Bradlander would, than some of these other candidates, but it'll probably be okay for him.
That is a conventional wisdom nowadays. I don't disagree with this, but I'm not sure, like, is Zohran Mamdani really a polarizing figure within New York City politics as compared to, like, an Andrew Cuomo? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Right? Like, scandal-ridden, just terrible campaigner, just bad politician generally is what Andrew Cuomo is. Zohran doesn't really have that exact same baggage. Yeah, like that's perfect, Alex. Yeah, he's polarizing to them centrists in the media, not to people. Yeah, exactly. The question then becomes, is Zohran going to be able to bring out enough people? And so far with what we've seen with what the primary has shown, he's bringing out people. People bring power. Money also does as well. But you have to suppress the people in order for money to bring power. You have to suppress money for the people to bring power, kind of a deal. You know, it's the whole Marxist dynamic, right, kind of a deal. You know, the power of capital versus the power of people kind of a deal. You know, political economy, yada, 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 right? Like, he's not really a polarizing figure, not to, like, average New Yorkers. I don't think so, right? Like, he's going to keep doing this, like, I don't know, probably walking around, talking with people, making more viral content, yada, yada, yada. And he's probably going to bring out, I think, like, more people to want to vote for him instead of, like, wanting to bring out people to, I don't know, vote against him, right? Because that's the dynamic with Trump. He brings out people to want to vote against him. I think Mamdani represents the exact opposite dynamic. He will bring out more people to vote for him by, and this is what the left has been constantly saying, meeting where people are at and talking about the issues that they care about.
For him in New York City, because again, it's so dominated by Democrats. But this sort of thing where there's a question of how do you stand out in a primary campaign in a non-representative electorate.
I can't believe that
agrees with
Zohran
you much more than the general electorate will. But then if you've done that, then what do you do with these positions you've taken, particularly if you're dealing with the general electorate that is not all the way to your side? So I always think, like, just to finish this one example, is in Ohio, when J.D. Vance ran for Senate, Mike DeWine, who's like an intentionally not very skilled, kind of more older school Republican, he was governor, he won his re-election campaign that year by like 20-ish points. Vance underperformed in the Senate race. I mean, he won, but it was by 6, 7, 8 points. It was not an amazing performance, in part because he had taken very, very MAGA positions. Now, it has worked out for J.D. Vance, yeah. But not in the sense that J.D. Vance overperforms with general election audiences. Like, this is where it's like, it's an uncertain trade a lot of the time.
It's a really uncertain trade. And I think to add one wrinkle here that I think is interesting and slightly wheezy but worthwhile is that, you know, New York City has ranked choice voting. The ranked choice voting allows voters to rank 5 different candidates. That created some interesting incentives that are a little different in this race that I actually think worked against part of what you're saying there, which is like being the biggest bomb thrower is the most distinguishing. But the way ranked choice voting works is you don't want to alienate other people's supporters because you want them to rank you second or third or fourth. And one of the things I thought was very interesting about how Mamdani navigated this, and I think huge props here to Brad Lander, who came in third in the sort of first round of voting, was that there was all these cross endorsements and this sort of coalition building. So it wasn't just
coalition building is important.
There's a kind of politics you see particularly in Republican primaries where like the rest of these people are sellouts and I'm the truest MAGA, you know? There kind of wasn't that. Mamdani wasn't running against like the Democratic
establishment. Brad Lander, let's go. And Mike, listen, can't forget our boy Michael Blake as well. That's true. You know, cross endorsements, it works. You know, coalitions, they're what win politics. That's what wins elections and stuff like that. You know, coalition building, alliance building, stuff like that.
Establishment. He wasn't running against like there wasn't this kind of like. You see this amongst the sort of left flank of the Democratic Party of like these corporate sellouts, like they suck. There was not very much of that. There was directed at Cuomo, but it was a pretty like he cross-endorsed other candidates as well. And I think the reason that's salient for the general is that it's in a primary, but it's also coalition building. Yeah, and I think that coalition building actually ends up.
You know what? The video of like Andrew Cuomo going to vote and saying like I'm only ranking myself, right? Even like that dumbass Whitney Tilson who tried to do everything possible to simp for Andrew Cuomo. Yeah, Andrew Cuomo didn't fucking reciprocate any of that shit. Didn't give a fuck about any of that stuff, right? It really tells you just how much that man Andrew Cuomo was just trying to like fucking coast off of his like. It's like I'm Andrew Cuomo. I used to be governor. Heckin' epic, woohoo! So you know he got like trounced as a result.
Being extremely important in general. Which, by the way, New York City had 5 straight terms of Republican mayor. Let's not forget.
Yes.
So like the idea that like, the expectation is the Democrat wins is like a fairly recent vintage. Like Giuliani won twice. Bloomberg was 3 terms. That was 20 years in a row of Republican mayor.
I think some of his people will not like hearing me say this. I read Mamdani as a left pluralist, not a left populist.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is to say that people, I think, have very, very shifty definitions of populism, but in its classic definition, like what actually makes somebody a populist politician is not that they believe in redistribution or believe that the working man is getting screwed a bit. It's that they believe that the system is built around like a true people and then the sort of like small conspiratorial enemies of the people who are keeping everybody else down. And if you can just break through them and have your villains and destroy your villains, you can sort of hit the more utopic politics you're looking for.
That's not what populism is. Like populists are people who advocate for popular policy, generally speaking. If you are a populist, generally what you are going to do it's like very often in terms of rhetoric that populists use, they talk about this is not what populism is. They will use like enemies in order to have a rallying cry for popular policy, but that's not what populism is. Populists are people who only advocate for, popular policy. If it is popular with people, then a populist is going to be in favor, which is why it is possible to not only have right-wing populists, because right-wing policy can be popular amongst people, but generally speaking, most left-wingers tend to be populist. And the reason for that is because, A, they actually believe in people power, right? And B, left-leaning policy is popular with people. That is why populism works as like a sort of like kind of general political ideology. It's not about like enemy class distinctions, generally speaking. No, that's like more socialist and Marxist sort of critiques and stuff like that, which like Zohran like sort of incorporates. He talks about it, you know, he doesn't shy away from such distinctions, right? But it's not about like populism or pluralism. Like, I mean, we can look up the definition of populism as well, right? Like they are people who advocate for popular policy. Yeah, it is a contested concept. Yeah, used to refer to a variety of political stances that emphasize the idea of the common people. Populism is a contested concept used to refer to a variety of political stances that emphasize the idea of the common people, and often this group, and often position this group in opposition to a perceived elite. So that is generally the sort of rallying cry, right? That a lot of populists use. It is frequently associated with anti-establishment and anti-political sentiment. See, this is where I don't like necessarily even agree with this like definition here. Again, like populists push for popular policy. They use the elite as a sort of like rallying cry in order to get, popular. That's not like even this definition is not exactly accurate. Like, it's unfortunate. Refers to a range of political stances that emphasize the idea of the people, often juxtaposed against the elite. Then ideology defends the pure people versus the corrupt elite. Political program or movement that champions or claims to champion the common person. Yes, I do like this definition probably a bit more because, claims to champion, which describes right-wing populists pretty much accurately, because they claim to champion the cause of the common people, and then they snub the common cause of the people all the fucking time. Yeah, populism, political program or movement that champions or claims to champion the common person, usually by a favorable contrast with the real or perceived elite or establishment. Populist usually combines elements of the left and right. The problem that I have with this is that, like, it's not mentioning how like the right they're just charlatans and liars. So opposing large businesses and financial interests are, but also frequently being hostile to established liberal, socialist, and labor parties. Yeah, so this is like the sort of like more conservative definition of fucking populism, of which I don't necessarily agree with. But no, generally speaking, like, because I don't think right wingers are populists at all, right? So that's like the broader definition that I like prefer working off of with populism is people who advocate for popular policy, right? People who push for what is popular amongst people, whether that be, said through polling or what have you, blah, 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 blah. People who push for those policies are populists, right? Generally speaking. And, this can be like a whole mishmash, like complete like nonsense, right? And a lot of the time that real or perceived elite or establishment, like, very often this is used as the main sort of political rallying cry to get people to, well, on your side. That's kind of the point of it.
I've seen many like right populists and left populists. Mamdani's, what struck me often about his affect, which I thought was a bit of a TikTok affect. Because TikTok is like its whole thing, and it doesn't really work this way anymore. But for a very long time, they were really pushing it to be a positive platform. Right? Like they positioned it algorithmically against what was happening on Twitter and Facebook and other things at that time. Mamdani always seemed much more motivated by his sympathies than his resentments. And Cuomo felt to me much more motivated by his resentments than his sympathies. And this also then played into the RCV dynamic you're discussing, which is, I think it would have been natural to assume that these other more establishment, long-serving New York politicians would be likelier to cross-endorse and work with the front-runner, former governor, who could both in theory give them more because he was likely to be elected for most of the campaign, but also somebody they would have known better because he's been in New York politics forever. And to me, this was both like politically meaningful and substantively meaningful because it undercut the central argument of Cuomo's candidacy. They all hated, not all Jessica Ramos endorsed him, but like they largely really, really disliked him. Like Brad Lander, like really clearly dislikes Cuomo, and so do a lot of them. Like they did not want Cuomo ranked. So it created this interesting space where the dynamics were not.
Well, I mean, I think it's even as you mentioned before, Ezra, right? He's scandal ridden. He's like very vindictive. Cuomo is a very, very petty man, right? Like, if people don't like him, and again, the only reason why Jessica Ramos even like probably ranked Cuomo at all, or endorsed Cuomo, I think, is just because she doesn't like AOC. She was being spiteful of AOC. That is why Jessica Ramos like decided to, stump for fucking Cuomo or sponsor fucking Cuomo. Like, there's like no, like, I don't know. I assume there's probably no like ideological predilection there for her, but like she just did that out of spite of AOC. Like, that's the only reason. So, but the thing is like Cuomo is just like an ostensibly like odious figure that nobody fucking likes. He's scandal ridden. He's petty. He's vindictive. He's difficult to work with. People, broadly speaking, do not like him because he just exudes like terrible qualities as a person. That's why people don't like him.
You would have thought in a low insurgent versus Democratic establishment race.
And there's this validation role that ends up happening, which is like if you're hearing that the guy's this like terrifying, scary figure who's an extremist, but then the other candidates in the field are cross endorsing with him and cheering him, like it makes it much harder for that to land. And I think again, to Mamdani's credit, I agree with you that he does not have a kind of like I think it's well said that he's sort of animated by sympathies as opposed to resentments. His affect is welcoming and pluralistic, and also not like they're out to get me. Like he really just does not portray that at all, which I think can be a real problem for a certain form of kind of left populist politics. Like it's a rigged system, it's all rigged, the fix is in, which again. He got $25 million dropped on his head. Back money. Bloomberg wrote a $5 million check like 2 weeks. Like, there was a little bit of a rigged game against him, but he did not let that. If you look at that walking the length of Manhattan video, the affect there is welcoming and inclusive at all times.
But this is where I don't want to over McLuhan, Marshall McLuhan, everything. It's a medium's always message and every shaped by the mediums, because obviously a lot of people on TikTok or in vertical video who are not like Zohran Mamdani don't even follow.
I don't know. Like the thing with like the enemy sort of distinction here is again like it can be it just depends on the campaign, right? Like Zohran Mamdani would talk about the effects of billionaires, right? But he's not like he talked about like DoorDash, Cuomo's super PACs, Bill Ackman. He talked about all these people, all these interests, right? Like he didn't make it like a sort of like mainstay of his campaign. He would talk about it. He would do the sort of like populist sort of like rigmarole, right? But like because I do think that Zohran is a populist, right? He adopted like multiple parts of the strategy. He was pluralistic. He was also like populist. he just wanted to activate people who were, well, disenfranchised, right? By the fact that Democrats are not doing anything, by making it look like he actually believes in things and wants to do something. Because again, the sort of attitude that exists around Democrats nowadays is that they're just like do nothing, like namby-pamby, pimbly-wimbly fucking losers, right? That's the problem that people have with Democrats. They thought that Zohran's actually going to do stuff and improve material conditions, and he's going to like do something, but people don't have that about like the general sort of Democrats because, well, they don't really want to do anything.
What I'm talking about, but I believe this strongly, that the rise of populist right and to a lesser extent populist left politics all across the world, all at the same time, I believe the single strongest force there was not just immigration, and it wasn't. I mean, you can really look at this in the data. It was not economics.
Right.
I think it was the rise of these central communication platforms of politics being high conflict, high engagement, like compressed text platforms. And I think those platforms, in a way that we do not have incredibly good even language for, are somewhat illiberal in their design. That they are, and by that I mean that they are structured in a way that makes the fundamental temperament of liberalism hard to do. They're not well suited.
Well, the thing is that people they just don't like that stuff anymore because liberalism is not addressing their material conditions. Like right-wing populists lie about trying to address people's material conditions. At least they fucking talk about it. Liberals are not interested in addressing material conditions. That's the main problem.
For deliberation. They're not well suited for tolerance, right? They're not well suited for on the one hand, on the other hand, right? The things that make deliberative liberal democracy kind of function, those habits of mind, the way you hear when like Barack Obama.
Yeah, but people don't want like on one hand or the other hand. People want material change. That's what they want, right? Like, again, this is just a fundamental problem with like neoliberals in general, right? How they're like conservatives, right? Who want to maintain the fucking status quo. People don't want the status quo. That's the problem, Ezra. People are done and sick and tired of, well, the status quo.
Barack Obama's not good at Twitter. He's just not. His Twitter's bad.
No, he's
right?
not.
It's terrible. Because they're about groups. They're about engagement like within and then against other groups. They're about like drawing these lines very, very carefully. And I think they just create by nature a more populist form of politics, or at least they create a communicative structure of politics where it is easier for outside populist politicians to thrive. The thing coming after it, which I don't know if it will hold this way, but this kind of vertical, like when you look at TikTok, when you look at Instagram Reels, again, it's not that no content is high conflict political content, but most of it just isn't. It's much more like day in the life stuff. It's very highly visual. And you just kind of saw that a little bit in this campaign. I think there was something in the grammar of Mamdani that was so inflected by that era. I mean, he's like really our first Vine politician.
Yeah.
Like people forget all this, but I think there was something there. His grammar was not Twitter's grammar.
Kind of goofy, kind of
his
like
grammar was TikTok's grammar.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, I'm sort of thinking this through. So I think I agree that social media as constituted over the last decade is structurally illiberal. I think I agree with that. Relentlessly, algorithmically competitive attention markets are going to drive towards the parts of us as ourselves that are the furthest from deliberation. Right? So like I have a whole chapter in the book.
Guys, there might be a problem with hyper commodified media. I don't know, guys. I don't know. It seems like there might be an issue with hyper commodified media that you guys are just not going to address.
About Lincoln Douglas debates and like how different that is. Not that should be the model for everything. So I agree with that. I think I'm sort of thinking through this idea of the visual grammar and kind of like affect of the vertical video as being less conflict populist in its nature, which I think is a really interesting idea. I mean, one thought I had when you just said that about Barack Obama's bad at Twitter is that it was funny. I watched the whole Mamdani speech and I was like, it's fine. He's not great at giving a speech. Like Barack Obama was great at giving a speech. That is not his message.
There are great 1-minute clips in his speeches, though.
There are great 1-minute clips in his speeches, but like his speech performance, his vertical video performance is a 10 of 10. His speech performance was not a 10 of 10 to me, and I think that speaks to something about the nature of that. And I think you're right that like I guess here's the one counterpoint I would say.
Well, I think it's because like people are just like sick and tired of like conventional politicians because like conventional politics and politicians are just not working anymore, right? Like that's why people are just sick and tired. Again, it's about the economy, stupid.
To me, like there are ways in which those algorithms over time, and partly this has to do with the weird black box of the algorithm, right? Is they do start to get more and more conflict embracing because the like clapback video and the posting of the comment if someone said something and then you like respond to the comment and it's up there in a window and the stitching became this thing that like really generates conflict. Like here's this like dumb clueless person saying this thing and I come in and I stitch and talk about how stupid they are. So I do think there's still that incentive, but I think you're right that overall the vibes directionally in vertical video right now are more positive than the vibes of, say, the cesspool that is X.
It's also, the other thing here, just reality, is it's more capacious. I mean, the fundamental reality of the Twitter text box, I mean, it's a little less true now, but it still is basically true, is its compression mechanism.
Yeah.
And the move towards languid podcasting. So we're just like sitting here vibing for 2 hours, or longer, right? I was amazed. I knew this was out there, but on the abundance side, when it did some of these podcasts, like Lex Friedman and others, where it's like you really do 3 to 4 hours. But even in this, like what you can do, like you can put up, 6-minute videos. I mean, I have videos that go on TikTok that are 6-12 minutes. Actually, a lot can be in there.
Yeah.
It is not that it is compressed compared to the Lincoln Douglas debates, but it is a lot less compressed than what the original Instagram box allowed you, than what the dominant for a very long time Twitter box allowed you, than what a Facebook post offered. And then, I mean, what Mamdani's doing a ton of was podcasting.
Yeah.
Right.
And then getting clipped from that.
And then it gets clipped, but it does come in the context, of these sort of much longer conversations.
Do you have any clippers?
I actually find it very hard to maintain I've had many people into the show because they're such harsh critics of me, and I find that they find it very hard to maintain criticism when you're in a sort of extended social dynamic.
Devious of you.
Well, it's actually sometimes a problem. Sometimes I have to like, here, remember you hate, right? Like, we're here to talk about this. But these things, you just really see when you do that, like how much mediums shape us all.
Yeah.
And so it's not that it's all vertical video is gonna be sunny, right? It just is.
I'm trying to think, like he's saying, like it's a lot difficult for people to maintain their criticisms. Like, I don't know, like probably not of like he had a debate with like Sam Cedar, and Sam Cedar just, I don't know, they didn't really like go at each other all that hard. Like, it wasn't like internet like blood sports or whatever, because that's not really Sam Cedar's style. I mean, Sam Cedar's been in the game for like 20 fucking years, right? He's been a radio host for like what, pretty much the entirety of his life, right? Like, not exactly. I mean, I guess it depends on who, right?
Going to be different in ways that I'm not even sure we're quite ready to understand in politics.
Yes, I totally go with that. And I also think that, like, there's a sort of, I'm just sort of spitballing here, so I can hear already in my head the academics who study this being like, you're totally wrong. But let me just throw this out. Like, we've got the kind of like semi-apocryphal story of the 1960 debate with Nixon and Kennedy, and how people listened but Nixon won, and people that watched the Kennedy won, and like,
if you go watch that debate, Nixon just does not look that bad to me.
No,
I've read it a few times, and Nixon looks totally.
No, the reason I say apocryphal is like, I'm not even sure it's true. It's sort of become this kind of mythos about how this works, and it's capturing the central sort of McLuhan insight about like how much the medium structures this. There was this kind of, there's a sort of pre-literate politics in America when you have a very small percentage of voters who can actually read. Then you have like the beginnings of radio politics, and people know about the fireside chat. Television is totally transformative to American politics. The first wave of internet politics that lasts for a very long time is written politics. It's the politics of text. I mean, all the stuff that's happening with like blogs when we came up, and Facebook posts and all this stuff. We are now moving, like, we're going through this transformation where everything will be video. I mean, at least for the foreseeable future. Who knows? These trends change on a dime. I think it's interesting to consider what that does, right? Like, is the media strategy too? Okay, I'm recruiting candidates, people that can get attention. Those are going to be scarier propositions, because part of attention is sometimes conflict, provocation, views that are not boring, that jump out at you, and interviews and talking to a lot of people where you might say something that is a quote-unquote gaffe, or that people don't like, or offend certain people. The institutional orientation of the Democratic Party is like, yeah, no. And I think there's a great example of this with Mamdani down the stretch. If we talk about his media, he went everywhere. He said yes to everything. He gave an interview to a Pakistani news channel in Urdu. Have you seen this?
No.
At some level, I was like, why are you doing this? Down the stretch, just like in the last week. But it's like, right, maybe that gets back to Urdu-speaking New Yorkers who share the clip. Like, he then also goes on mainstream, he goes on alternative, he goes on subway takes, and then he does the Bulwark. Now, the Bulwark is like sort of a centrist, center-right, anti-Trump network.
Center-left. I'm at this point.
Okay, fine. It's center-left at this point. It's in the big.
I love the boy. Tim Miller's great, but
it's in the big Democratic.
It's in the anti-Trump tent.
It's in the anti-Trump. It's strongly in the anti-Trump tent, but it is founded by people who used to be Republicans and whose feelings about, say, Israel tend more towards the right of the Democratic coalition. And they asked him this question about this phrase, globalize the intifada.
Which is a very popular phrase at protests on the left. And
not the globalized intifada stuff. No.
Good intent, but there's certainly some people who are saying that phrase with violent intent. So I wonder what you think about that.
He gives an answer that starts off with, I thought, a very long and good thing about Jewish safety and the Jewish folks that he's talked to in New York City.
And just a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a Jewish man in Williamsburg who told me that the same door he would keep unlocked for decades is one that he now locks out of a fear of what could happen in his own neighborhood.
And then he basically says, look, intifada is Arabic for struggle, and that in fact word is used in the Holocaust Museum website to mean struggle.
The very word.
Again, like the thing is, like this whole globalized the intifada bullshit is just like, it's like 2003 like Iraq war, like Islamophobia fucking bullshit. It's complete fucking nonsense, dude. Like, it's fucking stupid. It's like, dude, like, why are we doing this like 3 IQ bullshit where it's just like, history's rhyming again, doesn't repeat but it likes to rhyme kind of a deal,
Been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising into Arabic, because the word that means struggle.
Sure.
And as a Muslim man who grew up post 9/11, I'm all too familiar in the way in which Arabic words can be twisted, can be distorted, can be used to justify any kind of meaning. Yep. And I think that's where it leaves me with a sense that what we need to do is focus on keeping Jewish New Yorkers safe. And the question of the permissibility of language is something that I haven't mentioned.
And the headline that comes out from it, I don't think it was a great answer, to be very clear, is refuses to condemn globalizing intifada. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, okay, so now we're seeing the cost, right? Like, we've seen the benefit.
I think the answer is fine. I disagree with this. Like, I think the answer is totally okay. The problem is that, like, again, it's like it's a fucking conniption. It's a schizophrenic, like, conniption that these fear that these people are. It's complete fear mongering. It's nonsense, right? Like, there's no basis for any of this stuff. Intifada is a fucking word, okay? It can mean certain things at certain times. This is just how the dynamics of language works, okay? Like, do we need to be like what, like fucking linguistic prescriptivists or some shit? Like, this word clearly must always mean this thing at this time, at all times. It always means only this. It's like, no, it's fucking, language is free-flowing and dynamic. It changes given the time. Like, if certain things can mean certain things at particular times, like, that's just how language is. That's how language always has been. Words change. They mean things at a particular time. They mean different things at another time, right? Like, with current like lingo and shit like that, like cinema or cooked or cucked or whatever. Language means things at different times and different places. Like, that's the dynamics of language. And again, the only reason why intifada means the things that it does is because of the complete like nonsense fear mongering that was ginned up due to Iraq war, like a Patriot Act, like tier bullshit. That's the like. That's why everyone's just like, Antifada means it's a stinky word that obviously means jihad, and it's obviously always bad at all times. It's obviously stinky and it's bad. And it's just like, no, it has a very specific meaning, but that means certain things. You're just twisting it to mean something else. It's not honest, right? It can mean certain things at particular times. Depends on how someone's using it in a sentence, but that's just a language thing. Like, that's just linguistics. Like, I don't know, cope about it.
He's been everywhere. But going everywhere means you might have a news cycle where you say something like that. And I think it's pretty striking that he went anyway. Because I do think the old way of thinking is like, say no to 10 things if it means that you never have the news cycle about globalizing Intifada. And him embracing the strategy he did meant that he had a news cycle in a city with 1 million Jewish voters. Like, people's views on this can be very strong. That was all about him refusing to condemn globalizing Intifada, a kind of nightmare scenario for your political staffer on that campaign. A genuine nightmare.
But again, it's fear-mongering bullshit, right? Like, it's nonsense. That's the thing.
That didn't have the effect that I think a lot of people
maybe
have.
implies the politics of that are not what people think they are. Yes. I will say, I will only speak for myself on this. So my priors on Andrew Cuomo, I was not like an incredible fan of his governorship from afar, back when he was being talked about as presidential candidate, and then everything that happened to his resignation struck me as really kind of upsetting. Two things turned, but I was sort of, I'm open to people's redemption, right? If he wants to run a great campaign and he's learned a lot, like, maybe he'll be there, who knows? I don't think you can have I think you have to be open to redemption. Two things about that campaign. One was that the number of people, even people who endorsed Cuomo, who talked to me about his cruelty or his tendency for revenge, like I had somebody tell me he was a sociopath and then endorse him a couple of days later. And it's like that was like one line that I just couldn't get over, right? Somebody who this is the way they've treated people in public life. Like, that's a bar. I want candidates.
Okay, I am glad that at least Ezra is bringing up the fact that Andrew Cuomo is an extremely fucking petty, vindictive fucking loser. Like, he's petty, he's violent, he's a loser, he's a very sore loser, and he will do anything possible in order to just get revenge on people. And at some point you just kind of have to like stand up to like someone who's just like a dumb fuck bully, and just be like, you know what, fuck you. You're an asshole. You don't act like this. Go fuck yourself, you little shit. And that's kind of like the sort of attitude I want to catalyze, broadly speaking, in terms of like a lot of like the right-wing, like rightward shifts that generally speaking sort of happen here. It's like, you know what, fuck you. I hate you people. You guys are assholes. You shouldn't be acting like this. You had parents. Fuck is wrong with you?
But the other thing that like actually closed it, that made it for me that I would not rank him, was the way he used his run the campaign. Like, I'm a Jewish person. I have very, very deep feelings about what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and I found it so cynical, so repulsive. Just such a vicious way to weaponize, I thought, both sort of Mamdani's ethnicity, but also, I don't know, what's happening in Gaza is a horror. People should be horrified. The mayor of like the whole thing just struck me as gross. And I knew a lot of people for whom it read that way. The thing in the debates with the guy who fighter were like visiting Israel.
What's the first country you're going to visit?
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I've said in the UJA questionnaire that I believe that you need not travel to Israel to stand up for Jewish New Yorkers. And that is what I will be doing as the mayor. I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
As a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't say it as a Jewish state.
And his answer was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that.
Well, that's quite literally like the Ilan Popeye thing. I know like a bunch of like dumb fuck left wingers are just like saying like, no, you're not supposed to say that Israel is supposed to can't exist as like a state. It's just like, that's not gonna fucking work, you idiots. Like, politics, okay? Politics, okay? Think like politically for like 3 seconds. If he says that, there's gonna be like it's gonna be a complete media shitstorm, right? Like, that would be potentially a problem. Like, the globalized the Antifada stuff is like very, very defensible. Stuff like that's going to be way, way more difficult of a needle to thread. Like, there is a needle that you can't thread, but, like, that's not really going to work. Given the fact that how much the Overton window has shifted significantly in terms of, like, Palestinian rights and liberation and stuff like that, and how, like, polarized people are against Israel, in, like, a standard sort of, like, political media environment, saying that, like, Israel shouldn't exist as a state... Not quite there yet. Not quite there yet.
That's what he was trying to say.
It was such an obvious political game.
Yeah, it was deathlessly cynical.
Yes.
And I have to say, I mean, it was also comical at a certain level. Like, to me, I mean, like, my formative years were spent at, like, Shabbat dinner at my friends' houses and going to bar mitzvahs and being in this milieu of Jewish New York. And it's incredibly precious to me, and I feel like incredible, like, profound gratitude and affection for that. And, my wife's half Jewish. Like, I'm not like doing the bona fides, but it's close to me. Like, I'm not Jewish, but it's a culture that I like love deeply and feel bound to. And so, yeah, I found it deathlessly cynical. It's deathlessly cynical. I mean, comical to the point also where the other thing that complicated this, and this is an interesting angle of this whole thing, is that Andrew Cuomo, like me, is a paisan from New York. The guy's not Jewish.
Yeah, Brad Lander, who cross-endorsed Mamdani, is Jewish and very devoted to questions around Israel.
He's also the highest ranking Jewish official in New York City.
Yes.
And so you have Andrew Cuomo, like, I'm like, what are we doing here? Andrew Cuomo is browbeating.
A lot of the things that
Oh yeah, that was some like that's been pretty much Andrew Cuomo's campaign, is just browbeating people about fucking Israel, because again, like, of the fucking goddamn protests that happened, right? Like that's like what's catalyzed that in particular, all about the fucking goddamn protests on university campuses, and going along with the Zionist schizophrenic conspiracy theories that they're not, we're not safe on university campuses because all these damn people in their drum circles are saying that they hate me, they're gonna kill me, and it's just like, that's not even true, man. Like, what do you mean? And like, a lot of like Democratic establishment politicians and shit like that decided to like go along with this like idiotic like nonsense. It's like what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you saying? This is like complete nonsense. Like, bro, you're fighting ghosts. You're fighting ghosts, my dude.
that happened in his campaign happened on like a literal level and a metaphorical symbolic level at the same time. And one thing that I thought about that moment when Mamdani didn't condemn globalized intifada was it had this quality of, this is what he believes. He is not going to sell out a politics and a community who he either belongs to or has very, very deep sympathy for why they feel the way they do. And with Cuomo, like, I'm not saying that he does not have like beliefs about Israel, but it felt like the Oppo researchers had come to him with a packet, and he was now going to use what was in the packet. And a lot of things are
Oh, you're like right there, Ezra. You're right there, bud. You're right there in recognizing the main fundamental problems that people are having with the Democratic Party is the fact that it's so ridiculously fucking consultant brain to the point that it believes in nothing. That's the main fucking problem with the Democratic Party, and Cuomo is like the perfect sort of like encapsulation of complete utter deference to consultancy brain.
Or not. I mean, we can talk about the popularity of different ideas, but some things are also just communicating what kind of person you are. But also, I've been very interested by the way that Israel and Gaza have become highly kind of symbolic, like attentional in both directions, right? There is the Gaza's genocide, direction, and also the people who have made themselves aggressively into like moderates, anti-leftist moderates. You see this a bit with Cuomo, but you see it with Richie Torres, right? You see it with John Fetterman. Is like the strongest, most consistent fight they pick is on Israel.
It's like now weirdly the ideological delineator.
Israel's become the culture war, I think, within the Democratic Party.
I don't think I disagree with this, right? Yeah, I don't think that's silly to say, right? And it's one that the establishment Democrats, they're gonna fucking lose on, right? Like, we've seen the polling, like, Democrats do not like Israel. But then again, Democrats hate their voters, so, Democrats polling on Israel. I guess I'm glad I'm not gonna skip this particular bit now, right? Polls show little Israel support amongst Dems voters. 12%. 12% of Democratic voters sympathize more with the Israelis than Palestinians. Oof. That is not good, dude. Right? Like, one of these, like this week, Quinnipiac poll, one of those issues was the Middle East. U.S. voters were asked whether their sympathies lied with the Palestinians or the Israelis. 37% said the Israelis, 32% Palestinians, 31% did not offer an opinion. That's among Republicans. What I want is Democrats. Among Democratic voters, Israel's reputation is in shambles. Just 12% of them sympathize more with Israelis. Dude, this is something that can be catalyzed. And this, again, like, and I do agree with the sentiment. I don't think Israel-Palestine is the main reason why Democrats lost in 2024. I think it's a big factor. Big factor, absolutely. Not the main one. I still think it's because of Biden's ego. That was the main factor, to be honest. But again, like, this is, Democratic establishment politicians, you guys should keep stimping for Israel. Hey, Chuck Schumer, wonder why your approval rating's at 17%. I don't even want to think about what his dumbass is going to get voted out for sure in the next primary. Fetterman's cooked. I think his political career is basically over. Like, bro, for lack of a better term, barely functions, barely goes to votes, barely does his fucking job, and he's like a huge simp for fucking Israel. It's like, yeah, you're cooked, buddy. It's over for you. Like, it's not a good look. But again, like, Democrats, again, common trend with them is that they really hate their voters.
Yeah. And just if you want to really send a strong signal, like I'm just struck by how many the signals sent for people who do not have a lot of power over, American policy with Israel are sent on this issue.
I think there's also an added dimension to that, which is that there's just enormous estrangement between the establishment of the party and the base of the party.
That's right.
I saw the polling on the
I'm glad Chris Hayes is saying this. Thank you, Chris Hayes.
Iran strikes where like 85% of Democrats opposed and I think 13% approved.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at Democratic legislators' responses, you would not think that those were the numbers. It reminds me a little bit, and I think it's actually a dangerous gap for the party because someone will come into that vacuum.
Oh God, you got they're like right there, dude. Right, they just have to say it's because of the consultancy fucking brain that plagues the Democratic Party. That's the final piece. That's the piece that puts the puzzle together. That's the one.
Donald Trump really exploited a huge gap between the elites in the party and the establishment on immigration and trade and the base of the party to tremendous effect. There is something like that in the Democratic Party right now on the issue of Israel. There is just, poll after poll after poll. And I think this has to do with a bunch of complicated factors, although I think the driving factor has been the war in Gaza since, October 2023. And I think you really saw it play out in this race. I mean, New York City is the most Jewish city in the country and the most Jewish city in the world, one of the most Jewish cities in the world. Outside Tel Aviv, it's the second, highest number of Jewish citizens. It's also like that number fails to represent how Jewish the city is in terms of its cultural milieu and like I said, like the fabric of New York, right? And I think it's shocking to a lot of people, and even to me, I have to say, that someone with his politics on this conflict.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
That is really like, and I think
and did it without shifting from that. Like,
no.
He used to support defund the police, and now I think says he does it and actually does it. He does not want to defund the police as mayor. But he held his line.
He is an anti-Zionist, I think, and is now.
Right. He said like Israel should not be a Jewish state.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and I think you're right that there's something. I mean, again, I feel a little weird about this conversation because I really. It's thorny for a million reasons, but it's also like I respect the views of people that are closest to it, and I am not the closest to it, so I'm always kind of like trying to check that in me. So it's weird for me to be like, it's bad for the Jews. I'm not a Jew. I think the way this is developing within the Democratic Party is kind of dangerous. Yeah. I think the idea of like, this is a signifier of the rich elites who control everything behind closed doors, which is both an anti-Semitic trope and something that touches on something close to being true about how money flows in Democratic politics, is like a really combustible mix.
I think that's right, but I think two other things about it being a signifier. One,
I don't think I exactly agree with that. Yeah, Zohran, he is probably. I mean, he gave the answer that Ilan Pappé would give, right? He wants like a one-state solution with equal rights for all. That's Ilan Pappé's position, which is a position I agree with, ostensively speaking. I mean, you can make the distinctions between like money and politics, the interests that grip the Democratic Party from like Jewish people, That's not really as big of an issue within the Democratic Party. That's more of an issue within the Republican Party. Not so much with the Democrats. Like, there's like, and they're a minority of a minority of a minority, and that is like very anti-Semitic, like Marxist-Leninists, right? Like, they're tiny. They exist, but they are like a tiny, and they're not going to vote for Democrats anyways because of like stupid American diabolism bullshit. And that's a whole different fucking shebang. People just really despise the fact that there's a genocide that is being like, for lack of a better term, like live streamed. Like, I don't think that's hyperbole to say. Like, that's the main thing people are having issues with. It's just like, dude, this is like a genocide that's going on. It's being like a live stream, which is why I do the meme of like, hey, IDF, as your legal advisor, personally, I think you should keep streaming this at all times, at all costs. Keep doing it. You guys are doing great. You're doing fantastic. It's very fetch, very good, very fantastic. And it's just like, that's the problem that people are having, right? Like, they're just like, dude, like, I'm just seeing like constant videos online of like people being turned into mulch. Like, one of the biggest content creators, and I see her post constantly now on Twitter, is Miss Rachel. She's one of the biggest fucking YouTube content creators, children content creators on the planet, and she's talking about Free Palestine. Like, every time I see one of her posts, it's hashtag Free Palestine, hashtag Free Palestine, hashtag Free Palestine. It's just like, dude, like, you just made a huge voice, completely fucking polarized against just the Zionist project within Israel because of just how ostensible and horrible that the current genocide is going on. Not to mention the attacks attempted by all these like schizo groups of like Stop ADL and like all these other fucking complete morons, or not Stop ADL, Stop Anti-Semitism, and like the ADL and all these like complete like morons and charlatans. Like, it's just like they make it like Zionists make it really easy for people to be polarized against them. But there's always going to be people out there, and they're a minority of people, I think, who just ostensibly just want to see, like, yeah, they're brown. Fuck them. Kill them. Who gives a shit? Just exterminate them because they're brown and they're stinky because they're brown. It's just like, well, goddamn, that's like mostly a thing that's going on within Republican circles. This is not so much a Democrat problem. There's liberal Zionists. They exist, broadly speaking, generally speaking, they do. But they are not as aggressive about it as a comparison to the Zionists that exist within the Republican Party. They are much more prevalent there.
One is it's a signifier in two directions, right? It's a signifier in one direction being willing to stick to your beliefs, right? That I think a lot of people in the base feel that even Democrats who actually agree with them will not say on Gaza and how bad and horrifying that has been, will not quite say it or sugarcoat it or will not vote with it. And so there is something, both, again, I believe the belief's authentic to Mamdani, but also showing that you will stand up to that kind of pressure, right? In the other direction, it's showing that you will not be cowed for your Richie Torreses, your Fettermans. It's showing you will not be cowed by a different thing, right? Like the kind of the woke mob, right? So it's become a kind of declaration of independence from that. I will just say on the point you just made about
yeah, just because they're Republicans, right? Like, I'm not gonna submit to the woke mob or some shit. That's like complete fucking Republican bullshit, right? Like that's like the sort of like bullshit that they're operating off of, which is why their dumbasses are gonna lose their fucking campaigns. Like those guys are fucking cooked, probably.
Saying something true can veer close to saying something anti-Semitic. One thing that I always appreciate about Mamdani, and I appreciate about the Mamdani Lander Alliance, I'm a Jewish person. It is very important. It is very important that it is possible and understood to be possible that you can be anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic. And I'm not anti-Zionist in that way, right? I'm like a kind of two-state solution person. I don't really believe that is possible. I'm not sure like what I think is possible.
Yes, that's we understand. You're liberal.
Like I very fundamentally believe like Mamdani is anti-Zionist and not anti-Semitic, and he did a very, very, very good job in my view in answers of making that clear. Lander acted as a very important cross-validator for him. But in a world where Israel is going to be as brutal as it has been in Gaza, and is going to play much more of a role of like a regional hegemon militarily, which is what it has stepped into. And people are going to have very, very strong opinions, including very, very strong negative opinions on what it means for there to be roughly 7 million Palestinians who do not have equal rights and are under Israeli control. It is very, very, very important that they're like you just have to be able to be against what the Israeli state has become and not anti-Semitic. And it's going to be I think it is an incredibly dangerous game that pro-Zionist people have played trying to conflate those things. Because if you tell people enough that to oppose Israel is to be
I'm surprised that Ezra Klein is actually saying this. I'm humbly surprised, I'll be honest, because this is a very good criticism. Like I'm This is pretty. I'm surprised because most liberals who are more two-state solution, blah blah blah, they don't talk about like the danger of the conflict. This is the same shit Sam Cedar says constantly, like just how ridiculously dangerous the game that Israel is playing in terms of the conflation of Zionism with Judaism, which are not the same. Like I've said this before, Zionism is an ethno-nationalist political ideology with the express purpose of inclusion and extermination of minorities within their borders with the express purpose of building an ethno-state. And Judaism in of itself is a cultural and religious affiliation, right? Like, you're either culturally or religiously Jewish. You know what I mean. Yada, yada, yada.
Anti-Semitic, that's something to say.
Well, then I guess I'm anti-Semitic. Yeah, that's fair. I think that, and I think the taboo around anti-Semitism, which is born of the worst atrocities in human history, is like an extremely, like a wildly important taboo that is breaking down everywhere we look. Like, let's be clear. Like that taboo is disintegrating.
Yes.
And it's disintegrating for a lot of people, and it's terrifying that it's disintegrating. And the one thing I'll say again, and this is me like offering advice no one asked for from the position of just like, the Catholic boy from the Bronx who now lives in Brooklyn. But like, I also think there's tangible concrete things. I think there's tangible concrete things that Mamdani can do. Like, he should be going to Borough Park, and he should be going, to Ocean Parkway, and he should be talking to folks there and being like, we're not going to agree on Israel. Let's just say that from the beginning. I want you to feel safe and heard. I want your communities to thrive. I want the city to work for you. Like, let's talk about how we make that happen. And I think they're tangible. Like, there's huge security concerns. Huge.
Yeah, you heard him on Colbert. I thought he did a very beautiful job walking the line.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember.
Yeah, again, like I don't think I necessarily fucking agree with like it's gonna be like a huge there's a huge spike in like anti-Semitism. Like, again, like a lot of that is just the byproducts of like just how terrible of a state Israel is. But are there like huge increases in like anti-Semitic like attacks? I think this is like a broader sort of global trend that's generally happening because of the rise of the far right, and also now so with kerosene being poured on the fucking fire, the actions that Israel is taking in Gaza and doing the constant conflation of Zionism with Judaism, right? I think this is like a sort of like global sort of trend thing. Because again, like with the far right, with the far right rising due to like liberals not addressing material conditions, hate crimes, generally speaking, go up across the board. It's not just like an anti-Semitic thing, although like they're going to be targeted more, but it's also like anti-black, anti-Muslim, sort of like a general like anti-Hispanic as well, very much so, like general anti-migrant stuff, right? Like, the FBI has constantly said that the biggest threat to U.S. security and national security currently is domestic terrorists from far right-wing groups.
I remember the words of Mayor Koch. She said, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I had an older Jewish woman come up to me at B'nai Jeshurun in a synagogue many months ago after a Democratic Club forum. And she whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is. And I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you on my ballot. And I say this because I know there are many New Yorkers with whom I have a disagreement about the Israeli government's policies. And also, there are many who understand that that's a disagreement still rooted in shared humanity. Because the conclusions I've come to, they are the conclusions of Israeli historians like Amos Goldberg. They are echoing the words of an Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, who said just recently, what we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is cruel, it is indiscriminate, it is limitless, it is criminal killing of civilians. These are the conclusions I've come to.
I think that's a good place to end. Also, final question. What are 3 books you'd recommend to the audience?
This is an oldie.
Okay, I don't care about books. Thank you. Lovely. Very cool. Wow, we got through the whole thing. Okay, that was actually, listen, I thought this was gonna be like, it's like, ugh, I don't care about this particular issue, but no, it was a good transition. Good transition. Yeah. I thought I was gonna get like more angry at this. Not really. A lot of things that I ostensibly like sort of disagree with, generally speaking, like. Again, the sort of like framing of like populism and shit like that by like liberals, and again, like I don't know, it's not like Chris Hayes, I think, broadly speaking, doesn't really, he probably like partially understands this. Again, like this is like a general sort of problem that I have with liberalism in general. Like, I don't want to say 100% that Ezra Klein and Chris Hayes don't understand 100% the reasonings. They partially don't understand the reasonings for as to why like Zohran Mamdani ended up winning, right? Like, it was like generally sort of like brought up here, right? Like, in terms of like the housing policies and stuff like that is like the sort of like general thing that's going to be like mostly sort of like quibbled about, I would say. Like, some like pleasant surprises in terms of like Israel Palestine also at the end, all withstanding. Yeah, broadly speaking, things to agree with, things to mostly like to also disagree with there as well. Overall, I think it's like a good thing to have covered and taken a look at. Yeah, I don't think the liberals still really understand like the main issues, because again, like the main issue with the Democratic Party is the fact that they are a party that don't believe in anything because they are interested in courting the exact same interests as the Republican Party, and that is billionaire, millionaire cash, right? Like that's the main issue, and that's why, well, the Democratic Party is suffering. Mamdani is showing a case where it's just like, well, no, you shouldn't have to just appeal to these guys, and you can be successful. Like, I mean, AOC was also like a catalyst of that as well. Generally speaking, like it's more so like I'm not expecting them to probably have like a 100% like accurate, like, because they did understand it's like, yeah, social media is like a really, really huge tool, and it's like I agree with that, obviously, like, yeah, obviously, but the main problem is the underlying group basis of what the Democrats have in terms of like belief systems, and that is nothing. They don't believe in anything. That is the main issue, and again, that's like a position that they didn't really sort of address, broadly speaking, in this sort of like podcast. That's the main issue that happens with the Democratic Party, due to the fact that they are trying to build as the bigger and bigger coalition that they are trying to build. Well, eventually it gets to the point where the only people you can go in order to include in that coalition are like Republican suburbanite voters, right? We all know like the quote from like fucking Chuck Schumer during 2016, where it's just like, well, where we can just like not care about like working class like Rust Belt voters in like Ohio, will gain 2 suburbanite voters in Pennsylvania. It's just like, that is an attitude, I think, a quote that's going to like haunt Chuck Schumer and the Democrats for a very, very long time to come. And I think that's probably like the sort of like one of the main sort of reasons for as to why like the Democrats are seen as like just a do nothing, absolute who cares, omega lol, vibe shift, terrible party that it is now. And I don't think these guys didn't really inherently address that, because again, like it's part of it is because of how big the coalition the Democrats are trying to like broadly speaking build, but also a problem is because they are more interested in going after the same interests, billionaire corporation cash, that the Republicans also have. I think that's all I really got to say about this.